Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Well, hello and welcome to the MotorWeek podcast number 38. I'm John Davis, and I'm joined here in Studio C with our head writer, Shamit Chok.
Hi, John.
Our associate producer, Ben Davis.
Oh, chilly good day to you.
And our over-the-edge reporter, Stephen Shupnick.
Hello.
Nice to have everybody with us. Okay, we'll have our lightning round and our MotorWeek mailbag as usual. But first, what's old is new again with Buick and a new addition to the Lotus lineup. Let's start with the Buick Regal. Shamit Chok, you had a chance to drive this new Regal.
I did, and on the beautiful roads of San Diego, as a matter of fact.
Let me set the stage for this.
Please.
It is a rebadged Opel Insignia, which that's a German GM product. It was voted the 2009 European Car of the Year. It's the best-selling midsize car in Europe, which means it's a very large car for Europe. It was developed on the Nürburgring. It is considered a sports sedan. That is how Buick is going to sell here, which is unusual for the Buick brand, given the fact that in recent years they've been almost primarily totally luxury oriented. So it's a little different taste, but without Pontiac, probably apropos. With that, tell us what it was like to drive it.
Well, I mean, again, with the Buick brand, we've been seeing that it's going into a youthful, it's a younger direction, and this car does exactly that. It's going to appeal to a younger audience. The Regal name has been gone for 6 years, but here it is again. It's an all-new car, has two four-cylinder engines. It's actually powered by a four-cylinder and a turbo 4.
No V6s.
No V6s here, and we all know why. The fuel economy.
Well, why don't you enlighten us?
Well, I mean, the fuel economy standards that are being pressed upon the manufacturers are forcing them to go into a smaller engine direction. And what the turbo allows is better performance and better fuel economy. And I think
V6 performance with four-cylinder fuel economy.
Absolutely.
We've seen it in the Hyundai Sonata, and we're probably going to see a lot more of it.
No doubt. The car, they're actually calling this a German sports sedan. I mean, I drove it on at least, I would say, that the roads that they had pathed out for us, there were maybe 2,000 tight turns, and this thing it drives beautifully. It's very tight. It's very sporty. It's very impressive. The only thing that, and I've taken this up with you, John, is that I don't understand why they brought the Regal name back for an all-new car when they're trying to go in a more youthful direction. The Regal name just feels stodgy for what this car is today.
I agree with that. I mean, I had problems when they used the LaCrosse name on their new car. The LaCrosse is such a great name, and the original LaCrosse was kind of an old rewashed mid-sized GM car that just didn't have any appeal to anyone younger than about 65 years old. But they have made LaCrosse work because the product's so powerful. It costs a lot of money to establish a new car name, and I guess they just decided that they could do it with Regal. And after all, the Regal does have a performance heritage, but you got to go back, 25 years. Yeah.
Right. And that's basically their explanation for it too. But it's a beautiful car too. It's very svelte, very just styled beautifully, and it speaks to how it drives.
Other comments?
Well, if it's called a Regal, does that mean that there's a potential for a Grand National version coming up?
That's a real good, and the answer is yes. It's going to be called the GS for Grand Sport.
That's right. They've
already shown the concept, and it's a ultra high-powered turbocharged four-cylinder. And I don't remember the actual output numbers, but they've already basically said they're going to build it.
Yeah, they're definitely building that.
That's good.
And as a matter of fact, they showed it on the event, and it.
There is a comparable Opel model. Again, I've forgotten what it's called, but so again, it's a vehicle that's already been developed. They're just going to bring it over.
So it'll be here very quickly.
Very quickly.
That's right.
Well, the Grand National was mentioned on Facebook. We posted a picture, the question about this Regal. And the comments were, this is one of the first cars that I can get in with the Buick name, and for the generation of the 20s and 30s, you won't feel embarrassed to be in the car.
That's a good point.
Everybody, like we talked about, it's skewed older, but these new Buicks are younger. And actually, a lot of people commented that there is only the 4-cylinder and not a V6 or V8 turbo.
And I think they're going to be surprised when they drive it. I know you were.
I was very surprised. I couldn't believe it. I mean, really, it's they were talking it up, and until you get in the car, you never know until you find out for yourself. But it is the turbo, especially. It's got a lot of power on the turns. It's just very tight. It's
and I should point out, it's probably going to be a 30-plus mile per gallon car.
And that speaks back to the 4-cylinder equation. So yeah.
So they got the equipment, but the big thing is now to change everyone's opinion on the Buick.
Well, and they've started that with the LaCrosse
and the Enclave.
On the Enclave, yeah. So I think they're on their way.
They've gotten their whatever median age down. I'm sure it's still not where they'd like it to be, but it's no longer everyone. You don't have to be retired to drive a Buick anymore.
Correct.
Let's move on to our other car, which is decidedly a different kettle of fish, the Lotus Evora. Now, the Evora is the first all-new Lotus in a very long time. It shares absolutely nothing with the other current Lotus models. It is a 2+2, so it actually has room for 4, sort of. It is still a mid-engine car, which Lotus is known for, so that makes it the only mid-engine sports car that you can buy in the world. It's substantially larger than the Elise and Exige, which are their two-place sports cars, and it also has a 6-cylinder engine, which the Elise and Exige are 4-cylinder. Having said all that, our exposure to the car has been very, very limited. But what I saw, I liked. I mean, people are amazed when a guy my size can get into a Lotus, but I can, and I really enjoyed it, and I've been a Lotus fan since I was a teenager. What do you think about the car, your exposure to it, the look? Do you think it has potential?
The look is growing on me. I didn't like it at first, to be honest with you. In the dark green car that we had, I don't think it really played off the lines as well as I've seen in other pictures in red.
It was kind of a dull color. I mean, it had shiny to it, but the car just sort of disappeared.
It's a purist's color for sure. You'd have to be a diehard Lotus fan. But, I mean, there are tons of head and foot room in there, and those Recaro seats grab like Velcro. It was a lot of fun.
It's funny that Lotus calls it, this is hilarious, a daily driver, but I think it is a daily driver. I mean,
much more so than the Exige.
Well, the Exige and the Elise, you get in that and it drive around on our roads for a half an hour and you're rattled. This thing is...
There's a winter tire package that you can buy with it.
Right.
You can buy it with winter tires from Yokohama. So.
Yep.
What did you think about putting basically a Toyota minivan V6 engine in it?
That's... bad.
It didn't seem to. I mean, they've done a great job with it.
It's the same engine from the Camry too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Camry and the Lexus GS.
Yes, that's right.
But it's got their own engine management system with it, and it seems like they've made it work very well.
Well, I mean, I've heard that they've been sharing, or Toyota's been providing hardware back all the way to the Esprit days, from what I hear.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's really nothing new if you really do your homework on Lotus.
Well, our beloved Brian Robinson spent the most time with this car, and I've spoken to him quite a bit about it, and he was impressed on all fronts. I mean, he just thinks everything's a good match for itself.
It's interesting. It's an expensive car. It's $75,000. Right. However, when you look at the world of exotic cars and rarity and exclusivity, it's a steal.
It is.
It's
still an exotic.
Absolutely.
The back seat is funny though, because it's not a back seat. If you're 4 feet 8 inches, maybe it's a back seat.
It's an optional back seat too, though.
It is an optional back seat. That's right.
Only 4,000 units a year, so it'll stay pretty rare.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, you mentioned the color, and I was up in Cleveland recently and saw one in yellow, and it was parked in a lot, and you just screamed nice. Like, that's the color that it should be compared to the green one.
The British Racing Green.
That we had.
Yeah.
But ironically, too, the British Racing Green will probably be the most sought after in years to come.
Yeah, that'll be the one that everybody will want.
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn now to our MotorWeek lightning round. We've got 2 minutes to debate this question before Michelle Parker, our producer, rings that bell. All right, as we all know, recently Ford Motor Company announced that their Mercury brand was going to be discontinued in the end of this year. So they've gone the way of Oldsmobile, Plymouth, and Pontiac. Good move or bad move for Ford?
Can I start?
Sure.
I think contraction is the way to go for for a lot of these companies right now. I mean, there's too many brands to manage, and that's what's falling apart for them. So for them to have less to concentrate on, it makes sense. Now, if you look at Ford's lineup, Mercury seemed like the logical one to have to go. So it's a sad thing whenever you see a brand go, especially I think a lot of us were sad to see Pontiac go on the Chevy.
Well,
on the GM
I think
side.
Pontiac, personally, I've said that Pontiac I think was a mistake. But Pontiac was selling actually pretty well. Mercury, they were down to 80,000, 90,000 sales a year. Right. Most Ford and Lincoln dealers were now together, so there was no real reason to have Mercury. It was only the brand was developed just to provide some volume for Lincoln dealers. And in recent years, they've basically just been rebadged Fords.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, as I hate to see a brand die, but of all brands that have died recently, it seems to be the one that will be the least missed.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to agree with that too. Yeah. It's not like they were pulling Holdens and stuff like GM was in the Pontiac division, different brands from other countries,
and they certainly tried plenty of stuff over the years. Everybody remembers the Mercurs, the European Fords that were brought in, and back in the days when the Cougar was first came out, even though that was based on a Mustang, it was a different car and it had a great following. But in recent years, really, they basically were rebadged Fords, and they sold mostly to an older clientele. And being, I think, 1% or a very tiny percentage of Ford's overall sales, except for the dealers, there's about 300 dealers left hanging. I don't think it'll be missed.
Go
ahead.
I mean, our Facebook clientele or fans, it was a mixed bag. We had a huge response immediately after the announcement, and I'd say it was about 50-50 of people who were sad to see it go.
Isn't that interesting?
Some people were happy to see it go, and I had one person called it the better looking twin of Ford, but it had to go. Everybody was extremely vocal about it.
That's it. Very, very polarized. Very interesting. Okay, next on to our MotorWeek mailbag. Let me remind you that if you've got a question that you'd like to submit for our podcast, visit our MotorWeek.org website. You can submit your question. If chosen, you'll get a free MotorWeek T-shirt. No response. Come on, guys. You'd all like to have one. Yeah. All right, here's the question. This is from Vincent. He asked, why are speedometers on a street-legal car calibrated to 150 miles per hour or more, I might add? Now, even Montana has a speed limit that's under 100 miles per hour. So why do you think they put these 150, 180, and 200 mile per hour speedometers in cars?
I think the answer is in the question here. You can, first of all, you can take your street legal car into a track. You can take your street legal car to Europe if you want to. I don't think a car needs to be engineered to what our speed limits are. Speed limits change all the time.
You're making it too complicated. It's marketing.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were a little kid, you always used to peek in and see what the speedometer went up to, and you thought it went that fast.
Do you anybody here? You guys are all too young to remember when it was legislated that speedometers could only read to 85 miles an hour.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, back in the 60s, I think, and it was every speedometer, that was it, 85. Some legislator in Washington thought that was a great idea. So you had these cars that could do 120 or 130, and so you'd pin the needle. Well, I didn't, but a lot of people did, and that went away because it was simply stupid. It's a marketing thing. I mean, I think there are cars, obviously, that can do that, as you say, on a track.
Yeah.
But let's face it, who wants a car that's only got a speedometer that goes to 85 miles an hour? It's bragging rights.
That's right.
Anyway, Vincent, I think with the exception of Shamit's got a point about taking him on the racetrack, but I think most of it is just for show. Anything on that, Stephen?
I mean, I think when you see, like Ben said, I said when you see a car that the speedometer says 180, 190, it doesn't matter if you can go that fast.
No,
just the fact that a car can possibly go that fast is just kind of cool
and accurately recorded.
Correct.
Yeah, for everybody to see. All right, I want to thank Shamit Chok, Ben Davis, and Stephen Chupnick for joining us for this MotorWeek podcast. I'd also like to thank our audio engineer, David Wainwright, our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, and, of course, our lady with the bell, our producer, Michelle Parka. Parker. It's so cold in the studio, she's got a Parker on. Please join us next time for more MotorWeek podcast, and we'll see you on MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.